Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In March 1974, farmers near the city of Xi'an were digging a well. They were not searching for an emperor, they were not conducting an archaeological excavation. They were simply trying to reach water when their tools struck fragments of baked clay. At first, the pieces may not have appeared extraordinary. The region was already known for ancient remains, and villagers had occasionally encountered fragments buried beneath the fields. But as archaeologists investigated, the scale of the discovery became almost impossible to comprehend. Beneath the farmland stood rows of life-sized soldiers, infantrymen, archers, charioteers, cavalry horses, officers and generals. Thousands of figures had been arranged in military formation inside enormous underground pits. They had been buried for more than 2,000 years. Beside the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, the ruler who conquered China's rival kingdoms and declared himself its first emperor in 221 BCE. The discovery became one of the greatest archaeological events of the 20th century. The pits contained close to 8,000 warriors and horses, more than 100 model chariots, and tens of thousands of real bronze weapons. The army forms only one part of a vast funerary landscape. The Terracotta Army is often described as a collection of beautiful statues. But that description is too small. This was not simply sculpture created for decoration. It was an empire rebuilt underground. The emperor attempted to reproduce that order in death. His soldiers would remain in formation. His officials would continue serving. His entertainers would continue performing. His animals would populate an eternal landscape. And at the center, beneath an enormous burial mound that remains unopened, the first emperor would continue ruling. The army reveals two sides of Qin power. It reveals extraordinary artistic skill and logistics, but it also reveals forced labor and the ambition of a ruler who demanded a state follow him into the afterlife. Part 1. The man who unified China. Before Qin Shi Huang became the first emperor, China was divided among rival kingdoms. The period now called the Warring States era was defined by military competition, shifting alliances, and increasingly large armies. States that organized taxation, agriculture, and military service more effectively gained advantages. The western state of Qin became especially powerful. When the future emperor inherited the Qin throne in 247 BCE, he was still a child and was known as Ying Zheng. Over the following decades, Qin armies defeated all rivals. By 221 BCE, the conquests were complete. Ying Zheng created a new title, Qin Shi Huang, the first August emperor of Qin. His government transformed kingdoms into one system. Weights and measures were standardized. Forms of writing were made uniform. Roads connected territories. Military defenses were joined and extended along northern frontiers. The Qin state sought to replace regional identities with direct loyalty to an emperor. These achievements created the foundations of imperial China. But Qin rule was also feared for its severity. Harsh punishments enforced law. Large projects consumed human lives. The dynasty unified China, but its methods contributed to a rapid collapse. The mausoleum near Mount Li reflects this same contradiction. It is a masterpiece, an evidence of sacrifice. Part 2. building an eternal capital. Construction began shortly after he inherited the throne and continued until his death in 210 BCE. The historian Sima Qian claimed that more than 700,000 laborers were mobilized. Archaeological evidence leaves little doubt that the project required an immense workforce. The complex was designed as a microcosm of the emperor's world. The burial mound stood inside rectangular walls resembling an imperial city. Surrounding pits contained representations of the institutions required by a ruler. There were officials, entertainers, bronze waterbirds, and stables. The famous army stood to the east of the tomb mound, facing outward as though defending the emperor against the kingdoms he had conquered. This was therefore not simply a tomb containing objects, it was an alternative political reality. The mausoleum attempted to preserve that unity beyond death. Part 3. The army beneath the fields. The farmer's accidental discovery in 1974 led archaeologists to what became known as Pit 1, the largest pit. Pit 1 measures approximately 230 meters long and 62 meters wide. Its interior was divided by rammed earth walls into long corridors. Earth sealed the army below ground. The pit contained the main military force. Vanguard archers stood near the eastern front. Behind them, large formations of infantry and chariots filled parallel corridors. The statues were not placed randomly. Their arrangement represented an organized battle formation and provides archaeological evidence about Qin military structure and tactics. Pit 2 contained a more varied combination of cavalry and mixed formations. Pit 3 functioned as a command center for the larger army. Together, the pits were not simply warehouses filled with statues. They represented an army divided into operational units. The emperor wanted a command structure. Part 4. 8,000 individuals or carefully constructed types. One of the most repeated claims is that no two soldiers are exactly alike. Visually, this is broadly true. The surviving figures display extraordinary variation. Faces appear older or younger. Some have narrow eyes, broad cheeks, or long beards. Hairstyles and headdresses differ. Armor, robes, and body shapes help distinguish infantrymen, cavalrymen, and generals. No exact pair of fully identical completed figures has been identified, but it would be misleading to describe every warrior as a realistic portrait. The artisans worked from recurring types and standardized components. Certain facial structures and bodies appear repeatedly. Apparent individuality was created through combinations of standardized forms and hand-finished details. A craftsman could begin with a familiar type, then alter the eyebrows, beard, or expression. This was an ingenious solution. Standardized enough to produce at scale, but customized enough to create the impression of a real human force. Sophisticated mass craft production. Part 5. How the warriors were made. The figures were hollow rather than solid. This reduced weight and made firing more manageable. Parts were constructed separately and then joined. The term assembly line is often used, but it wasn't a modern factory. Research suggests a network of coordinated workshop cells. Different groups produced batches of objects. Analysis of 40,000 bronze arrowheads revealed remarkable uniformity. Yet chemical testing showed they were produced in separate batches by smaller production units. The crossbow triggers show a similar pattern. Components were made from different molds, assembled in batches, and delivered to particular sections of the pits. Multiple teams following imperial standards. This arrangement offered advantages. If one group had a problem, the project didn't stop. Work was simultaneous, quality was monitored, and standard measurements made components compatible. Part 6. An army that once exploded with color. Today, most warriors appear in shades of gray. That was not how they originally looked. They were coated in lacquer and painted in vivid colors. They were intended to appear alive. Uniforms were colorful, faces had natural tones, but the paint was extremely fragile. Exposure to air caused the lacquer to dry and detach within minutes. This is why excavation now proceeds slowly. Archaeologists must develop methods capable of preserving what is uncovered. The unexcavated figures remain protected by the soil. We are seeing the structure without most of its original surface. To imagine the army accurately, picture thousands of brightly painted soldiers holding polished bronze weapons in a grand hall. Part 7. Real weapons for an imagined army. The warriors carried real functional bronze weapons. Archaeologists recovered swords, spears, lances, and crossbow triggers. The weapons were standardized to equip large formations. Many carry inscriptions or marks that relate to workshops, officials, or systems of accountability. It was part of an administrative system. Part 8. The chromium plating myth. For decades, the preservation of some weapons produced an appealing theory. Scientists detected chromium on certain bronze surfaces. It was proposed that Qin metal workers had developed an intentional anti-corrosion treatment. But later research overturned it. Chromium was concentrated in the lacquer, not the blades. Preservation is better explained by combined factors. The burial soil is alkaline and fine, limiting corrosion. High-tin content in the bronze and careful polishing also helped. Accurate history needs no miracles. Part 9. The army was broken before it was buried by time. Most figures were not found intact. Many had been crushed. Evidence indicates the pits experienced looting and fire as the Qin dynasty collapsed. Qin Shi Huang built the army to guarantee eternal protection. Yet within years of his death, the political system was collapsing. The soldiers could not protect his heirs or prevent the dynasty's fall. The army failed in its supernatural purpose. But its survival was accidental. The same destruction that shattered the army helped hide it for 2,000 years. Hide it and save it. Part 10. The human cost behind the masterpiece. Monuments do not build themselves. Clay refined, bronze smelted, wood cut, food supplied, workshops coordinated, mobilization on an imperial scale. This labor force included artisans, convicts, and conscripts. The individuality of the figures reveals human intelligence operating inside an authoritarian system. Anonymous workers solved technical problems, but the glory belonged publicly to the emperor. The laborers largely disappeared from historical memory. We remember the ruler more easily than the people who made it possible. Part 11. The tomb that remains closed. The Terracotta Army is only the outer defensive force. The central chamber itself remains unexcavated. Archaeologists resist opening it to preserve what is inside. Sima Qian wrote that the chamber contained palaces and rivers of flowing mercury. Scientific surveys have detected elevated mercury levels, lending support to the ancient account. The emperor remains beneath. Part 12. Mass production before the Industrial Revolution. The army is sometimes called evidence that China invented the assembly line early. But the Qin workshops had no steam engines or fossil fuels. Modern industrialization was distinctive, but it did not create the capacity for organization from nothing. Ancient China had already developed systems for producing thousands of complex objects. The Terracotta Army should be recognized as evidence that sophisticated production has a longer and more geographically diverse history than simplified accounts suggest. A shared historical inheritance. The Terracotta Army is astonishing because of its scale. It reveals a government capable of mobilizing an empire, and a ruler whose political ambition did not end at death. The empire below ground would remain ordered forever. The soldiers failed to preserve his political rule, yet they preserved the workers, systems, and power of the Qin world. Farmers digging a well uncovered the empire's hidden memory. Servants to one man, now part of our shared inheritance. The emperor wanted an army that would protect him from being forgotten. In that sense, the Terracotta warriors completed their mission. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts.